Good afternoon, and welcome to today's STEM for Her virtual program titled Successful Careers in STEM. My name is Dr. Marion McKee, and I am a board member of STEM for Her. STEM for Her is a nonprofit foundation that promotes education to create awareness, excitement, and opportunities for girls and young women like you to pursue STEM-related careers. A few housekeeping items before we move right into the program. Everyone except the panelists and moderators will be muted throughout the program. In today's Fireside Chat, we will hear from 5 panelists discussing the professional trajectory for women in STEM. We will also allow time for questions and answers from the audience. We would really like to have questions from you. Please type your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And we will select a handful of them later in the program for our panelists to answer. We also have the chat function open if you just want to say hi or pop your question in there. During our program, we will be doing some quick periodic polling of the audience. Please be ready to respond with the answers to the questions. We want to know who's out there in Zoom land today and who's with us this afternoon. Let's launch the first polling question right now. Uh-oh. Here we go. Sorry. So let's launch that first polling question. Here we go. All right. So the question we're asking is what grade you're in school. So it looks like we've got a good number of high schoolers with us today, as well as some middle schoolers. So I really look forward to hearing the questions that you all have for our panelists. With that said, I would like to have that second poll come up, which will tell us a little bit more about yourself. How do you describe yourself? This again will allow us to have some idea of who's joining us and maybe some of the perspectives that you may be bringing to our program today. All right, let's see how the results of that went. We'll give you a few minutes in order to choose your answer or answers. Great. All right. We have a mixed group. I would say we have a couple of groups that are well represented and a few that are a little less represented, but I think that definitely gives us a little bit of a view of who everyone is. Thank you so much for answering the polls. We'll have another one a little bit later. So with that said, I would like to introduce to you the real stars of today's show. These are 5 successful women of STEM. Dr. Lorraine Buckley, who joins us from Eli Lilly, Adidi Chaudry from 2 Sigma, Jennifer Hain from ABL, Dr. Trudy Padmore with Decisive, and Victoria Velez from Deloitte and Touche. These professional business women of STEM will talk about the professional climate and culture for women working within STEM fields. They come from a range of backgrounds and are all in different phases different phases along their career journeys, which should give us a variety of perspectives. I would first like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your current job and what that entails. We're going to start with you, Dr. Padmore. You need to come off mute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trudy Padmore. Good evening. Oh, good afternoon. I currently work as a consultant for a consultant firm called Decisive. I work there, I consult with a lot of biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies to, I guess, broadly solve their problems. So whether that be for their drug launches or early on in their development process, in their R&D development process. So I would pass it off to Jennifer Hain.
Thank you, Trudy. Hi, Welcome, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hain, and I currently work for a company called ABL. At ABL, we manufacture drug product for our clients. So we don't have any molecules that we're progressing ourselves, but our clients will come to us. Some in the gene therapies field, some in the vaccine field, which is particularly relevant today. We put together a process development program for them and progress their molecule through GMP manufacturing. I will pass it off to Lorraine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lorraine Buckley. I'm originally from the East Coast, but I moved to Indianapolis, Indiana to take a job as a toxicologist at Eli Lilly and Company over 20 years ago. At Lilly, I work on drug development, and my job is to predict what kinds of bad or adverse effects a drug might cause in humans. I figure out what studies need to be conducted, gather the data, analyze the data, and then communicate the story of that, the potential for adverse effects in humans. Let me see, I will pass it off now to Aditi Chaudry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adidi Chaudry. I'm a cloud security architect at 2 Sigma, which is based in New York, but currently I'm in Reston, Virginia. I went to UVA, graduated in computer engineering and computer science, and I'm really excited to be with you all today. And I'll pass it to Victoria.
Hi, everyone. I'm Victoria. First and foremost, I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. I spent 26 years in the Air Force doing IT and emergency communications, and I helped with warfighting operations while I was in the Air Force. But I had to transition out because eventually a lot of good things have to change. And I'm currently working for Deloitte & Touche as a manager supporting cybersecurity initiatives. And I'm helping the National Institute of Health better secure their systems. And I get to help them meet federal security compliance requirements. And when the systems are compliant, they tend to be more secure and have fewer risks and better protect the system itself as well as the data that rides on it. And it's a great job, and I've been enjoying it very much. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Marion.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you very much for sharing where you are and what you're doing right now. I think it's, again, as I said, we've got a panel that really has a nice broad spectrum, I think, in terms of careers and experiences. So my next question is a little bit more, or my first real question, I guess, versus introducing yourself is to all of our panelists again, and that is, what sparked your interest in your STEM field? And when you tell us that, tell us what areas of STEM, the S, the T, the E, and the M, and it can be more than that, you feel that you fall in as a starter, and then what sparked your interest in it? Lorraine, I'm going to pop over to you on that one first.
Yeah, hi. So my father was a math and chemistry teacher, so I had an early awareness of science, and I admired my father. So I liked math and chemistry, and I was good at those subjects in high school. So I went to college in Western New York for a degree in chemistry, which I loved, but I realized that I wanted to apply it to living systems, but I didn't want to be an MD. So one summer I had attended a sort of an emergency medicine CPR course, and the instructor was just chatting between lectures and telling us how strychnine worked, and I was hooked. I was fascinated how this chemical interacted with this part of the body to have the effects that we all are very familiar with strychnine. So after that, I was doing some research in the summer at college, and I found a little postcard, which is how they used to do it in those days, a little postcard tacked to the chemistry department bulletin board. And it basically said, come to Arizona and learn toxicology. And I was like, toxicology, that sounds really cool. It is basically the basic science of poison. And again, I was hooked. And so that's how I got started, from chemistry and then toxicology.
Thank you very much. Jennifer, what about you when you think about STEM and what sparked your interest?
Yeah, I gave this question a lot of thought because there wasn't really a pivotal moment that I can go back to. I think going into graduating from high school, going into college, what I knew was I was okay at math. I was terrible at physics, terrible, but I had a wonderful physics teacher who taught me a lot and taught me patience with the process. I think, once I found myself in college, I changed my major probably 5 times. And what I realized about myself is that I'm a generalist. I like to learn a lot about, or a little bit about a lot of different topics and pull them together. And so at the moment, I work in sales for a biotech company. So I get to use management, I get to use business, I get to use leadership and biology. I think if we were talking about the STEM field specifically, I most relate to the science part of STEM. I'm a biologist by training, and yes, just the ability to use all parts of my interest in my current role is really how I found myself to be where I am.
Excellent. I think that's one of the things that I find a lot is that we kind of meld a lot of it together. It's not so simple as one thing, is it? So what about you, Trudy? What sparked your interest in STEM and sort of what do you consider yourself across the STEM?
Sure. I guess I'm more of a pragmatic type of person. And so really when I was deciding in high school what to do with my career, I was more focused on, well, what type of job I'll get coming out of undergrad. And originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and our industry is really oil and gas based. So I wanted to be a chemical engineer. And so all of my subjects in high school was kind of focused around doing that. And then I came up to the US for undergrad university, and I studied chemical engineering, of course. And while I was doing that, I got introduced to the biotech side of things, and that kind of opened my eyes a bit. So that sort of changed my trajectory a little bit. And so I went to grad school to study chemical and biomolecular engineering. So I have both, I guess, a science and engineering background coming out of all of that study. So yeah, that's what I went to school to do. Now I'm kind of pivoting towards the business end of things, but I'm still using my science and engineering knowledge, those critical thinking skills that you learn to help other people solve problems. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Victoria, what about you in terms of STEM and where you see yourself and what sparked your interest?
Well, I'm clearly in the information technology side of things with STEM, but I'll tell you, when I started college, I really wanted to build bridges and roads and be an engineer. However, not exactly like Jennifer, but I loved physics, but it just took too much time. 3 hours every night. And I said, no, I can't be doing this. So I switched over to computer science and information systems management, which is a blend of business as well as computer science, and graduated from the University of Maryland, so I'm local, with a degree in information systems management. And I'll tell you, I tickled my father because he actually was part of the first group of people in the Air Force to do coding and systems analysis. He started creating computer programs for the Air Force, and so he was very tickled that I kind of followed his path.
I hear two fathers were very influential so far, right? So
Yeah.
quite a bit there. So, all right, Adidi, how about you in STEM and what sparked your interest?
Yeah, to kind of go along with the theme of fathers being inspirational or influential, I guess. So both my parents are engineers, and I grew up thinking that, oh yeah, I'd either be like an engineer or like a doctor or something like that. Then I went to like a camp that was held at the hospital in middle school, and decided I didn't want to be a doctor. So high school, started taking computer science classes, I really got hooked. The idea of being able to like program a computer to do what I wanted to do was really interesting and kind of fun also. Just like, you know, the branches of computer science and like with robotics and stuff, all of it just seemed really fun. And then I was kind of hooked on that path and took that with me to college. And so I guess for like what part of STEM I'm in, it would definitely be engineering, but I would say also tech now with my current job, because I work a lot in cloud computing and cybersecurity. And so the overlap there is also like, it is very like computer engineering focused, but also very tech focused because, you know, we're working with computers. So yeah, that's my story kind of in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see a question here, and I think some of it got answered, which is great, but I'm going to pop it in there a little bit too. And that is, so for myself, I'm the S, I'm scientist in STEM. And my next question will tell you a little bit. I aspired to be in the medical field, and I think you heard a couple here also say the same thing, but took a little different path. So I do think, to the question that's out there, if you want to be in the medical field, but not necessarily go to medical school, there are definitely options out there. I think what Lorraine's talked about a little bit in terms of toxicology, there's various other ones, or going down the research road as well. There's quite a bit of research that supports the medical field. You can imagine thinking about what's going on today. So I think there's a lot of lab science and a lot of opportunities outside of medical school. And you may find along the way you want to go back and do that. So thinking about our audience today, and we took that first poll, we're primarily middle and high school, girls who are middle and high school. So I'm going to toss a question to some of our panelists. Everyone may not answer this, but I think we can all remember when we were in middle and high school. You know, when we were 15 or when you were 15, where did you think you would be at this point in your life? I know for me, I thought I was going to be a neonatologist saving preemies at this point in my life. My entire growing up, I was going to be a doctor, and it wasn't until college that I decided that wasn't the path for me, and research science was much more where my interest lay. But so tell us a little bit, Lorraine, I'm going to start with you about, you know, when you were 15, where did you think you would be today?
Well, you know, I didn't have a clue, really. I mean, I liked chemistry, that was lab work. So maybe, you know, working in a research laboratory for the chemical industry or for biomedical industry. You know, looking at things now, I mean, you kind of find your way. I think they're lucky, but few, the people that are just make a beeline for something that they figure out at 15 or whatever, and then go for it. I kind of went, you know, started things out, and then I'd get experience and I'd see other options, and I would, you know, lean another way. And so I would have to say that that's probably, my career is pretty much like that, and it's been great.
So keeping yourself open to options and to new things has been a very positive aspect.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, I know we're not giving advice right now, but that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice is being open. Just don't be so focused that you're missing the other possibilities. I have this little, I'll just have this little Chinese fortune stuck to the top of my computer, and it says, that which appears insignificant will become crucial. And I think that that's how we should go.
I like that. Who else wants to talk? Who wants to field this one about, you know, when you were 15, where did you think you would be at this point in your life? Anybody? Okay. And I told you my little bit. Trudy?
Yeah, so I thought back to when I was 15 that I would definitely like have a hard hat on, go like look at pressure gauges and do simulations of chemical plants. And for 2 years after I did undergrad, I was actually a process engineer doing that. And I said to myself, I'm like, this is not what I want. And one of my professors told me, you know, about dreams deferred. And so I know that I wanted to be in a biotech, and that's kind of how I went back to grad school in the beginning. To touch on a little bit of what Lauren said about being open, for me coming to the US and my parents not having education levels higher than high school, I really didn't get that, I guess, that advice and direction from them. And so for me, being open meant kind of going after those different things to kind of draw a bigger picture of what the possibilities were out there. And so a lot of my trajectory now has been after I've been exposed to possibilities and kind of seeking that out and saying, well, okay, I want this, I don't want that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think we kind of started into that next question too that we have, which is now we fast forward to where we are today and in our respective careers. And so how different that is from the vision at 15. And I think we've started to talk about that a little bit. So, you know, let's start with Trudy, and then I think we'll kind of move over Victoria a little bit, sort of get your feeling on that as well too, sort of fast forwarding to today versus, you know, when you were 15, kind of how different that vision is and a little bit about that path.
Sure. So as I mentioned that I went back to school after working for 2 years. This was against all of my professors' advice. They were like, go straight to grad school. You know, that's what you want to do ultimately. And I'm like, no, I want to work first, make that money. But yeah, so my vision for myself was basically when I went to grad school to be a scientist, like really at the bench, creating drugs for people. I didn't want to be, I guess, administering drugs like doctors that my grandparents wanted for me. I wanted more to be on the end where I'm creating these new things that can, you know, like cure cancer. So that's where I really wanted to be at the time. How did I get there? I went back to grad school and I actually did work as a scientist for about 3 years before I pivoted to the business end of things and at my current job. Yeah.
Thank you. Victoria?
Wow, 15 was a long time ago, but I remember distinctly thinking the world is going to change. Because at 15, the world wasn't quite as open as it is today, and the opportunities weren't as great as they are today. And I will tell you that stepping into the Air Force was pretty cutting edge for my girlfriend's perspective. You know, they were like, "Oh, you're so courageous to go into the Air Force." Well, it wasn't as a difficult decision. It was just, where is this going to take me? So there was a lot of excitement. You know, you've seen the Navy ads and the Army ads on television, I'm sure, Marine Corps, and they tell you what an adventure it's going to be. And I will tell you, it was an adventure. And the Air Force gave me an opportunity to do a lot of different things, because every 2 to 3 years they were moving me somewhere else to try on something new. And that was pretty fabulous from a professionalization and learning technology perspective. Because when I started in the Air Force, a personal computer took 2 people to lift it. It was called the Z100, and it took 2 people to lift that thing onto a desk. And now you have laptops, you have your phones, which have more computing power than the first desktop computer I ever worked on. It's incredible how change has evolved. So in terms of what I dreamed about seeing a lot of different places, and the Air Force gave me that opportunity. But I'm not trying to sell the Air Force to you. I'm just telling you that that was my path. And my parents were pretty excited about my path, and my father was very proud because he was in the Air Force for 20 years. But the information and the knowledge and the leadership and management skills that the Air Force gave me certainly translated to post-Air Force opportunities. And so the Air Force exposed me to security, and that's what I've been able to parlay into better and better positions after the Air Force. So it was pretty great.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Victoria. So the next question, I'm going to ask Jennifer and Aditi to kind of talk about this one a little bit, and that is, what is your favorite part of your job? What makes you excited to go to work in the morning? Jennifer?
Sure. It's not actually the work that I do, which is, I enjoy the work that I do. I enjoy, right now we're in interesting times. The work that we do has an impact on helping resolve this current, COVID situation. And that's really powerful. At the same time, on a day-to-day basis, it's the people that I work with that bring me to the job. I'm really exploring more as I, take on higher and higher roles. I'm exploring more on leadership and what leadership means, and how I can have a positive impact on the people around me. And you can do this in any field, really. But really, in my current role, my current job, what I like, it's working with people to solve problems. That's really what gets me jazzed. If there's a client that comes to us with a problem, or if it's an internal problem that we're trying to solve, it can be scientific, it can be, personal, just getting the thought going around how we're going to work through this problem together, feeling like we did that as a team. That's really what gets me up out of bed in the morning. Sometimes only to my home office, but sometimes to the real office these days.
That's true. The concept of getting to work is a whole different one than it was. But one day. So, Aditi, what about you? What's your favorite part of your job and what gets you excited?
Yeah, sure. Well, I love my job, and I think the most fun thing, especially when we're in the office, was just the people that I worked with. It was really great to just like know that, oh, I'm gonna go into like a really positive, collaborative, like supportive environment where like we're all trying to solve either the same problem or like similar problems, but we're all working together to like solve a very common goal. Um, and yeah, it was just fun. It's kind of like, I don't know, sometimes how I felt in college with when I was like working with my friends on a problem set. It's nice to have a very similar feeling now when I go to work. And then I would also say just like the type of problems that I get to solve. So what I work on, to go into a little bit more detail, I guess, is in the cloud, just essentially securing the applications and the data that my company puts into like a cloud computing environment. And the cloud is relatively new, I guess. So it's really exciting and cool to be able to see how far it's come in a couple of years, what the future in the cloud looks like, and like securing the cloud and just making sure that, like you see all these hacks and stuff that happen to other companies, and trying to make sure that doesn't happen, knock on wood, that doesn't happen to my company. And yeah, it's just like the problem solving aspect is really cool, right? Like there's some problems that you don't even know that exist, and like trying to find a solution to prevent them. It's pretty exciting.
Awesome. I hear a common theme too, both of you solving problems, whether it's for the client, for the work environment, or even for your coworkers. Does anybody else want to field that or have any more input on that in terms of what's your favorite part of your job or what gets you excited to start the day?
I'll just say I really do agree with what Jennifer said and Aditi implied about teamwork. It is so great. It's one of the favorite parts of my job too, is to sit in a room with, a chemist, a clinician, a drug disposition specialist, a pharmacologist, a regulatory scientist, and figure out how are we going to move this possible new drug through non-clinical safety testing. That's me manufacturing, giving it in clinical trials. So I love that whole mix. I'll tell you, on the other hand, sometimes I love waking up and knowing that I have some blank space in front of me to like pull all my data together and write a story and a document for somebody to understand, what we've learned and what we think about it. So it's kind of two ends of the spectrum.
I like that. Yeah. For me, I very much like knowing that what I'm going to do that day, whether directly from me or from the people I work with on my team, is going to have an impact on the overall ultimate health, right? So I learned a long time ago from my previous boss in another job, and I've kind of echoed it from that, is we don't make the medicines, we don't invent them, but we make sure that they get to get out there and get to the patients and that they're safe. And I I love knowing that each day that's going to be a piece of that puzzle that's going to make that day. So, all right, you all, I am loving, by the way, that I am seeing a very active Q&A over here. I'm seeing questions come in, and we'll pull some of your questions in a little bit, but I'm also seeing our panelists answer some of them as they go. So thank you. Please do keep the Q&As coming. I am ready for our next polling question that we're going to take a little break and get some feedback from you all. So this polling question's got a little bit more to it, so it might take you a few minutes, but it's like, what do you think are some of the top barriers for not having more girls and young women in STEM? And so you can choose your top 3 and check all that you feel apply. I would say kind of go for your top 3. But what do you see as the barriers? And this is going to take us to our next questions with the panelists, which are about the challenges that they have seen and some of the barriers that they have seen as they've come along. So, you know, is it lack of exposure to STEM fields and possibilities? Is it lack of encouragement? I'm hoping that lack of female role models is something we're helping with today. Or just about the fact that maybe it's perceived as too hard or too difficult or being isolating or unfriendly towards women. So what's kind of your take here in our audience on this? I feel like I should be playing Jeopardy music, but it's not that kind of a question. I'll give you another little bit and let's see those results. All right, wow. I should put this where I could have taken a screenshot of it. All right, this is really interesting. We're pretty divided across a lot of these, except for the lack of technology. That's probably our lowest number here, and lack of STEM leaders in educational environments. But we definitely are seeing those female role models are lacking, that encouragement and mentorship. So let's now turn to our panelists. I'm going to give them a little opportunity then for the next question to really kind of talk this through, because your poll questions answers are giving us some food for thought here. So Adidi, I'm going to toss this one to you. What are some of the challenges that you encountered along the way, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna, I guess, highlight 2 main things that I remember feeling when I was in middle school and high school, just to kind of cater this to our audience a little bit. So I remember in middle school, Mean Girls had kind of just come out, and there was that scene in the movie where Lindsay Lohan's like, oh, she wants to do math, she wants to go to like math team or whatever, and then Regina George is like, oh no, like that's social suicide. And I kind of took that very literally. Even though I love math, I absolutely love math, I was very good at it, but you know, like there's that notion that you also want to be popular, well liked, have a lot of friends when you're in middle school and high school, and I mean really just wherever in life. So I guess the first thing that I felt, the first challenge I felt like I had to come over in this like journey of STEM was kind of just believing in myself and not being scared to do what I wanted to do. Like I have to, I guess it's kind of peer pressure also, but just not really succumb to like the idea that what other people think of me, or how, yeah, like what other people think of me, like that shouldn't matter so much to me. Like I'm in charge of my life and my career, and if I want something, I should just do it. And it's so much easier just to say that than to actually do it. Like there was a lot, I'm gonna say drama, but it wasn't like actual drama. But you know, it's just like it's scary. It's a very scary feeling trying to do something that like none of your friends are doing, or that no one you really know is doing. And for in that, like how did I overcome that? I was lucky. My parents were very supportive. They put me on the right track, I guess, of being like, no, math isn't gonna make you like less liked or anything. And then same thing in high school. I found a group of friends who we had similar interests. We liked math, we liked science, we liked doing tech things. And I think that really helped, just finding people who are supportive. And it's like that saying where like you want to find friends who will like pull you up to the stars instead of like pull you back down to the ground. I think that's really important. And that's something that I think is true for like any part of life that you're in. Like it's totally true now that I'm working. It was true back then in college and in high school and in middle school. But yeah, I think like one of the biggest things I've had to overcome is just like the mentality that like I'm good at this and I should keep doing it because I like it and I'm good at it. And I shouldn't like listen to the haters essentially.
I like what you said about you find the friends that will pull you up to the stars, not pull you down. I think we all need that probably up above our computer screens as well. So as we talk kind of about the challenges a little bit and sort of how we've overcome them, anybody else on the panel want to take that and maybe talk about a challenge that you've had or encountered along the way and how you overcame it? I have one that actually answers one of the questions too. And I think, Trudy, you might want to grab this one. You may have it too, but it's one of the questions from our audience is how did you recover or bounce back when you had a change of heart regarding your career? And I'll speak to that one a little bit. And I think that that goes with the challenge. I said I was in the middle of college when my lifelong dream to be a doctor, I realized was not really what I wanted to do. And there's nothing more difficult than that conversation you have with your father who supported you all along the way to say, I'm not going to be a doctor. And then he says, so what are you going to be? And you go, I don't know. And I didn't know at the time. So part of the recovery and the bouncing back was I was at a school and I already had to do work study as part of my college to pay for my college and to get through college as part of it. I transitioned from working in the library to working in a research lab because I had figured out that I liked the lab work in my science classes. I had biology, I had chemistry. I actually even liked the lab in organic chemistry. As a matter of fact, that was the only part of organic chemistry I liked. I loved it, the laboratory. So I kind of knew that. So for me, it was finding what do I do? What do I like? You know, and that was very hard. And so that was part of that sort of recovery. Like Trudy, I also I continued working in those labs for 2 years after college before I went to grad school. And that gave me that respite and time to kind of really hone in, what do I like? So for me, it was microbiology in the long run. Anyway, so that's, I think, answers that one question a little bit. Anybody else? Trudy, did I see you maybe have something? That's cool if you know. Go ahead.
Oh, with the question about how do I feel about changing midstream?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I didn't really have any, it was more my decision to make, in that my parents were always supportive. They're like, you know, do your best, be your best. Very fluffy advice. And I was more, I guess, struggling with, should I have this chemical engineering degree, start work, or go to grad school and do this and maybe be something else in the future. And because I already had a job offer for the chemical industry, I was like, bird in hand, let me take this as opposed to like doing something else that I may or may not like in the future. And so that's why I went that route. But while I was in the workforce at the time, I was like, you know what, I really want to pursue this dream of mine. And I think I should do it. Like, yes, making money is great and you get to pay back some school loans if you have those. But I have time and I can always go backwards. I'm not going to lose my chemical engineering degree if I decided that, okay, pursuing a PhD is just not for me, you know? And so you have to give yourself that leeway and kind of step out. You have a little bit of fear, but, you know, step out there and go for it. Yeah.
I think that's a great point too. You're not going to lose that knowledge you already have. You're not going to lose that degree. When you make that switch, it's not like somebody comes in and goes, oh, we have to take that away. You can build on it and you can also use it as part of your pivot. So, all right. So the next question I'm going to send over to Victoria to start with. And that is, have you encountered influential people along the way on your journey? This kind of can be mentors, leaders, teachers, or others that you have done. And I think we've heard a few influential people already from our panelists, again, following in the footsteps of their fathers and some others that influenced them. But Victoria, tell us about them and what made them an important part of your path.
Well, to be very honest, I kind of have two people that really motivated me to um, be a little aggressive and to do the right thing and keep charging up that hill. The first is my grandmother, and my grandmother was born probably in 1901 or 1902 in Japan. She's a farmer's daughter, but I'll tell you, she was very, very clever, and she had the ability to be able to talk to anyone. And one of the pivotal comments that I heard through my mother, and this is just to tell all of you on the call, be courageous, and take advantage of all the opportunities you have. My grandmother was asked if, what was the one thing that you could have changed about your life? And she said, I would have been born a man, because she would have had more opportunities to do things. So that's the very first person who's motivated me to kind of do what I can to break through any glass ceilings I encounter and to just always do better. And the second, and I've shared this with the ladies before, is I had the opportunity to meet Admiral Grace Hopper. And for those of you that don't know her, this is a woman who probably stood like 5'1", and she joined the Navy at a time where very few women were involved, and she was basically a pioneer in computer programming. She invented one of the first compilers or linkers. I don't know if that's resonates with you guys who are in IT, but it converts English-like language into machine code. And she just basically started the whole evolution of making computer programming and computer systems more usable for man. And, it went from being a large room-sized computer to the laptop that I'm talking to you guys on. And she was phenomenal. In fact, some of the things that she did, and I was just a young lieutenant, and so I was in awe of this woman who'd been in computing for so long. She gave me a piece of wire that was about 11 inches long and a packet of pepper. And she said that wire represents a nanosecond, how long it takes for information to pass over that wire. And that packet of pepper, each piece of pepper is a picosecond. And so it was really great for her to allow us to visualize and to actually take home things that would represent information, which is always powerful for all of us. Those are my two folks.
I'm going to do a quick question too to the audience. How if you guys are in the chat function, shoot a thumbs up if you all know who Grace Hopper is, because I think a lot of you are going to know who she is, despite the fact Jennifer just gave you the wiki link. Before that, did you know who Grace Hopper was?
And oh, by the way, the Naval Academy has dedicated a building to Grace Hopper, and it's the Cybercomputing and Engineering Technology Center at the Naval Academy, which I think is amazing.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, pretty awesome. So, all right. So on that same question, in terms of the other panelists, does anybody want to add to that in terms of influential people along their journey? Again, I think we've heard a few, but does anybody else have anything in that? Okay. Jennifer?
I can maybe just, add something about women, lifting women up. And actually, when we had the women on this call, I've known some of you, but I've recently met others, and I didn't have a good answer for this question. And thinking back on it, I have somebody that I would consider a mentor who's just sort of always been there. And she just she pops in when I need a little support. She boosts me up. She gives me confidence to say, yep, is this the right thing or not, but you can do this if this is something you want to try. And then we don't talk for years. And then she kind of pops in, she prods me along my way. And I think, what my takeaway, she was the very first woman in my professional field that came and knocked on my door and wanted to start a friendship, outside of work. And this was maybe 15 years ago. And so it stuck with me as I need to pay that forward. It's one of the reasons that I think STEM for Her is so great. It's an opportunity to pay that forward. But even in, again, kind of in your everyday life, if there are other women and other girls that we can hold up, it's not something that we're known for, to be quite honest, but it's so powerful when we can come together as women and be stronger and not spend our time, fighting amongst ourselves.
Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer. All right, so we've talked about the challenges. Now let's learn a little bit more about life outside of work, and maybe think about that, because all what is it they say? All work and no play makes I'm going to say Jane a dull girl in this case, not Jack a dull boy. But what we do outside of work. So Lorraine, if I can just pop over to you a little bit and say, are there activities that help you maintain work-life balance, or something that you do outside of work?
Yeah. I would have to say that first and foremost, running. I really love getting out and just be, the physicality of it. And I'm often meeting friends. And that is a big thing for me. That's one of my favorite things in the world to do. I'm a reader. I like to garden. I enjoy music. So yeah, a little bit of everything, but the physical, running, tennis, biking. I met a lot of my friends that way, and it's just been a really fun outside of work thing.
Excellent, thank you. What about you, Adidi? What do you do outside of work?
Yeah, so I'm a Netflix person. I love watching movies and shows, but I guess like more movies. So yeah, now when I have time to catch up, that's definitely what I'm doing. I also love to read, and in terms of I guess like exercise types of things, I love doing yoga, especially now. It really helps like center me, I guess. Sounds really stereotypical, but when I moved to New York, I tell everyone that the reason that like I didn't like have like freak out as much as I should have probably is because I was doing yoga all the time. And then yeah, I love to run too, actually. I don't do it as much right now because it's like gross outside, but it's really nice. Like the endorphin rush that you get, I feel like from any type of exercise is just it's really nice. Yeah. Legally Blonde quote, I could say that right now, where she's like, oh, endorphins make you happy, and the rest of it, which is not that appropriate, but that's okay. Yeah, so I guess exercising, reading, watching TV, and just like talking to my friends.
Excellent.
Staying connected with people.
Excellent. All right, I want to take a minute then to kind of turn a little bit to some of your questions. I see them. And so all the panelists, this is open. I'm hoping that all of you, we can get a little bit. So one of them I see here, which I think is good, is one of our questions is, I'm interested in the computer field, and I'm wondering what a typical day in this field is like. So I think Victoria, you and Adidi, I think probably are the closest to that, but if anybody else wants to, what's a typical day in the computer field like?
Adidi, do you want to go first? Sorry.
You can go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say first and foremost, it kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're a coder, writing programs, doing systems analysis, nowadays, computing is something you can easily do at home. And so a typical day could actually be getting up, getting breakfast, and then working on your project. For me, it's kind of the same, but a little different because I have to reach out to system owners at NIH to make sure that they're actually working on documentation, and I have to help them with documentation. So my average day is spent on the phone quite a bit and on Zoom calls, trying to ensure that the documentation is progressing and that the people that are writing the documents actually have the information and understanding of the content that's required, because those documents have to be reviewed by the chief information officer and approved to ensure that the systems can continue to operate. And that's one of the reasons why we do the documentation, is to ensure that they follow the requirements and the NIH CIO approves and says that the system is blessed to go on. So it varies truly. And it's pretty great that nowadays so much of what you can do in the computing field can be done at home. that's not something I experienced in the past. So I think it's pretty great that that's an option now. Aditi?
Yeah, I feel like my day's pretty similar too. It really depends on the day. Some days are like very meeting heavy, which is necessary. Maybe not the most fun, but always necessary. Just because, communicating and making sure that you understand the problems that you're trying to solve, that's really important. Otherwise, you're going to build something that no one has any use for, and there is no point to that. But other than that, like, yeah, I feel like a typical day for me is just syncing up with the rest of my team, making sure that we're all on the same page of whatever we're working on, doing some heads down work. So I'm mainly code in Python and use some other like cloud computing infrastructure as code languages. But yeah, like heads down work, and then also just like collaborating with everyone else that I'm working on, depending on the project. So it's not, I feel like sometimes people have a misconception that if you're in computer science or even in cybersecurity, you're like wearing a black hoodie, your hood's up, and you're just like typing in a dark room. And it's not true at all. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but like I think, at least for me, and I'm sure everybody else would say so too, that a lot of our jobs like require us talking to people and being in communication and collaborating with others. So yeah.
I'd say the same for that stereotype for the scientist as well. I used to always say when I talked to the kids, I used to talk to kids in elementary school about it. We're not all in a lab coat around the corner afraid to talk to someone else. As a matter of fact, it's really important that you're able to communicate and to come out and talk about it. And I think, Lorraine, you mentioned already taking the data and writing the papers. If we can't communicate our results, nobody knows what happened. So, yeah.
On that point, communication point, I mean, we're talking about STEM, and that's really what we want to reinforce, the power of women in STEM fields. But you almost have to add a C to that, because communication is so important, and it will get you very far if you are able to stand up in front of a small group, a large group, and convey your message in a professional, real way. I was absolutely terrified of public speaking. I think it's on the list of, the things people fear most in life. It's like second on the list or something, like it's in front of dying, I think. And I remember having to do the first seminar in college at a visit at another college, and I memorized that whole talk that I gave, and I have no recollection of the whole 25 minutes or whatever it was. It was like a blank, but you just keep pushing yourself to do it. It really is worth it. So just, the communication is important.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. I had a last question for the panel, but I'm seeing some of the questions come in from the girls, and I hope you guys are okay if maybe we look at some of those again. There's two here that are somewhat related. It's maybe about the not so great sides of some of it, of being a woman in STEM. So one is about dealing, how do you deal with the various stereotypes, microaggressions, and erasure that often becomes with being a woman of color in STEM. Then we do have another one that is also about have we experienced any inappropriate behavior from men, or some of that's gone with it. So they're two different questions, but they're a bit related, because it's not all butterflies and unicorns in reality. So does anyone want to take I think Adidi, you said you might take the microaggressions and as a woman of color in STEM?
Yeah, this is hard because it sucks that like we have to deal with this. And so I would say like I have dealt with microaggressions, and I'm sure people have stereotyped me also. I think I feel more affected by microaggressions. So I will also just go over what a microaggression is really quick, in case that's like a new term. So basically a microaggression is like a very subtle way to kind of insult someone. So being like, oh, you're really good at coding for a girl. Like, you don't need to add the for a girl part, right? You could just stop that. You're really good at coding. But what makes it a microaggression is like for the girl part. And like, I think the one thing that has helped me deal with microaggressions like that is making sure that the work that I'm doing is the best to my ability, because you can't, like, if it works, it's working, right? Like, you can't come and fight me essentially being like, oh, you're a bad coder, if I delivered a project, delivered it on time, and delivered like a valuable item or a valuable product. And that's one of the things that multiple mentors have told me to kind of do. And then also back to the communication part, also communicating your work, that definitely helps with microaggressions. I feel like sometimes microaggressions or any type of stereotype, it comes from ignorance, maybe even prejudice too, right? It's coming from a place of like ignorance. They don't know you, they're judging you. You shouldn't have to show someone how great you are, but sometimes it sucks, and that's one way to get them to see you in a different light. You like essentially prove yourself. And I hate that. I hate that you have to do it, but sometimes that's what you have to do. And for me, I think what's helped is building a reputation with my network and building a network. So I have almost like a crew, right? Like when I walk into like a new team, working with a new team, to a conference, doing anything, like there's people that you know that like will support you and like have your back. And that kind of helps when you're dealing with any type of like irritating behavior.
Thanks, Adidi. I've got time. Actually, I'm looking at the time. I think we're going to actually have to start to wrap up. Sorry, guys. But I really appreciate the questions that we've had. And again, I see that the panelists have answered some directly. Unfortunately, we're coming to an end. The main thing I want to do right now, though, is thank our panelists. I really appreciate that you all have taken the time out of your day, out of your life, and come to join us today and share your stories and share your answers with the girls that have been on the Zoom with us. So thank you very much. Thank you, Lorraine and Jennifer and Adidi, Victoria and Trudy, kind of as you go around my screen. That's but thank you very much. I've got a quick footnote for all of the girls who are online right now as well. And that is registration is now open for our next event. So STEM for Her has an event coming up called Want a Career in Technology, but don't know if you want to code? Come hear about career options in technology. So this next program will actually answer or should address some of the questions that I've actually seen come down here in the Q&A. So Jennifer has just posted the link to registration in the chat so that you can register for this program that's coming up. Also, please fill out the survey that will come at the very end of this Zoom call. We would greatly appreciate it. It tells us about you, it tells us how the program went, and it really helps us improve our next sessions and increase our impact. And there's a bonus. The what's in it for me kind of scenario for you is the bonus is if you submit your info at the end of the survey, you'll be entered into a drawing for an iPad or an iPad mini or AirPods, but you must submit the survey by October 30th. So do that this week or as soon after the program, please. Again, I'd love to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank all of you who joined us today, and I really appreciate all the questions that came in from the audience. I think that really helped this be something that was more tailored to what you're interested in than just what we wanted to talk about. So stay safe and stay healthy, and thanks for joining.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a good week.